It's generally described as Trump being Trump. And I've said many times and continue to say that Trump can't be anything else but Trump. And that means that he's oblivious to his own self-sabotage. He has no self-control. He has no self-discipline. And frankly, as Jonah Goldberg points out today in his syndicated column, trusting Trump to amend his habits is futile because he enjoys the attention too much. Jonah, we have come a long way together, and I like it. Thank you. That right there is the full extent of Jonah Goldberg's personal communications with Donald J. Trump. He wrote it by hand and broad felt pen on the very page his column appeared in the New York Post, mostly in all caps, because Trump is never quiet about anything, followed by his signature, which looks a bit like an EKG reading. Well, that doesn't become sadly ironic anytime soon. It came to Goldberg as a PDF via email on September 4th, 2015, under the subject header, "From the Office of Donald J. Trump." Apparently, he does this sort of thing a lot. I know several other columnists who've received similar missives from the GOP nominee. But Goldberg likes his the best. It came after months of feuding with Trump. They had an epic battle on Twitter in which Trump insisted that Goldberg should be fired for not kissing Trump's ass. He told an NBC reporter that Goldberg didn't know how to buy pants. Still trying to figure that one out. But in Goldberg's column, he had given Trump a backhanded compliment. Jonah noted that according to the polls, the number one thing his fans liked about him was that he tells it like it is, which is crap, and always has been and always will be. He makes stuff up on the fly, which is entirely different. But Goldberg did concede that Trump was refreshingly unfiltered. The one thing of which you can be sure, Goldberg wrote, is that Trump hasn't consulted with a political consultant about how to talk. Yeah, I think that's fairly obvious. Of course, Trump imitators in the coming years will be counseled to talk Trump-like by those same consultants because, they're like movie studios. They don't have an original thought in their... They don't ever have an original thought, much less be able to rub three brain cells together. Now, Goldberg's theory was that Trump, a bridge and tunnel populist with a chip on his shoulder, at least that's the role he was attempting to play, never cared what the muckety-mucks at the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and even the pinheads at National Review thought about him, so long as they wrote about him. I'd be willing to bet that if there's a single newspaper in the country that Trump cares about, it's the New York Post, Goldberg wrote. The Big Apple narcissist has spent his entire career looking for his reflection on page 6 of New York's true paper of record, as opposed to page 1, where he would be showing off his moobs, apparently. And that's why Goldberg loved Trump's missive. Completely oblivious to the irony, the Big Apple narcissist proved his point perfectly. Now, I have no idea whether or not he thought his MASH note would win Goldberg over, but I'm glad it didn't. Boy, am I glad. Because it seems that whenever people put their faith in Donald Trump, he sets out to punish them for it. suckers! For 18 months. Well, 16 months now. Is that right? 15? Almost 16 months. He promised to pivot. Why anybody believed he would or even could is anybody's guess. And become presidential, which is, of course, not what got him the top spot in the GOP primaries. It was being not presidential that got him so popular, inexplicably and grievously, among Republican voters. But once he secured the nomination, what? Did he pivot? Hell no! He vowed he wouldn't change. And in an as far as it goes way, the logic is kind of hard to argue with. Hey, he got the nomination by being himself, being a dick. Why would he change then? Well, there's an answer to that question. Just look at the polls, in case you're wondering. But for somebody, again, who doesn't look at the details and at all, just looks at what people put in front of him, and in this case, polls and delegate counts, and why would he think anything else? Just hours after House Speaker Paul Ryan grudgingly endorsed him, Trump doubled down on his bigoted attacks against an American judge of Mexican descent. After rising in the polls a little bit, Trump started his verbal war on the parents of a slain Muslim American soldier. Con! Last week, a group of scholars and writers for Trump, that's the name of it, Scholars and Writers for Trump, issued their endorsement of the GOP, in quotes, nominee. One of the group's leaders, law professor F.H. Buckley, wrote, trusting it's no relation to William F. Buckley, wrote, quote, I have some sympathy for people who can imagine a better Republican candidate this year, but from the very beginning, I always thought that Donald Trump was perfect. I bet he swallows as opposed to spitting as well. 2 days later, Trump the Perfect was tweeting at 3:20 a.m. about Alicia Machado, the Miss Universe he humiliated 20 years ago. At 5:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, he instructed his millions of followers to check out her non-existent sex tape. Even the logic of that doesn't make any sense. If she was Miss Piggy, why would anybody want to get jiggy with Miss Piggy, aside from Kermit? Maybe not even then. These are just a few of the lowlights of Donald Trump's petty treachery, serial petty treachery. When he announced Indiana Governor Mike Cuck Pence as his running mate, he couldn't be bothered to stand next to him on stage at their initial press conference. In their joint interview on 60 Minutes, Trump treated Cuck Pence like he was an unwanted intern, which is pretty much what he was. I mean, Mike Cuck Pence's job now is to bring Donald Trump his coffee whenever he asks for it. Or a Red Bull, as the case may be. And, of course, poor Chris Christie has been abused like a valet in the court of the Romanovs. Trump is so incapable of taking advice, his aides have started leaking constructive criticisms to the press in desperation. A beleaguered Newt Gingrich had to go on Sean Hannity, probably not the best place to make a criticism of Trump, even a backhanded one, the other night and essentially beg a man he's ludicrously compared to Reagan, Thatcher, and Churchill to stop the nighttime tweeting. There's no excuse, ever. Then why do you continue to support him? I'll tell you why. His ego is invested. That's the thing with all Trumplicans. Their egos are invested. If they admitted that Donald Trump is everything that Never Trump says, is always said he is, that we were right and and are right and they're wrong and always have been, they couldn't live with it. And that too is a trait of a personality cult. Or like or being in an abusive marriage. The wives who are beaten by their husbands, but they rationalize that, well, he's really a good man, and you just have to know him. And Stockholm syndrome is another applicable metaphor. In any case, it's all for naught. None of it matters. Even if the New York Post itself blared on its cover, "Donald, get your act together," it wouldn't work, because the Big Apple narcissist, BAN, acronymically speaking, thinks it's better to be attacked in the limelight than to succeed out of it. As long as the attention is on him, that's what he wants. That's what he craves. Either people are kissing his ass and thus further inflaming and inflating that towering ego, or it gives him the opportunity to be a dick some more to his critics. Instead of taking the Post's advice, Trump would have his secretary send the editors a nice note thanking him for the front page placement. In other words, there is no way to prevent Trump from being Trump, and that is one reason among many why he will never be President of the United States, and Hillary Clinton will.